Welcome to episode 374 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Meyers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing Ben Hozie, who just wrote and directed a film called Private Chat about a guy who becomes obsessed with a cam girl. He's a New York filmmaker and also a musician in a band called Bodega. He talks a little bit about that as well and how that played into his filmmaking career. And today he's on to tell us about his new film and how he got it produced. So stay tuned for that interview. SYS's six-figure screenplay contest is open for submissions. Just go to www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/contest. The regular deadline is May 31st. After that, it goes up by $10. So just 2 more months until the regular deadline ends. If your script is ready, definitely submit before the final deadline, as you will save some money. We're looking for low budget shorts and features. I'm defining low budget as less than 6 figures. In other words, less than $1 million. We've got lots of industry judges reading scripts in the later rounds. We're giving away thousands in cash and prizes. Once again, if this sounds like something you'd like to learn more about or perhaps enter, just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/contest. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking or sharing it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mentioned in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast, and then just look for episode number 374. We are continually building out the SYS screenplay library. It is a free resource where we just post professional produced screenplays. We've got literally hundreds, if not thousands, of screenplays in that library now. Again, they're all in PDF format. They are all free just to download. And we're constantly adding to that. And I just want to thank a few people who have recently sent in scripts. We've got those scripts now added to the library. So definitely check out the screenplay library. If you're looking just to download some scripts, check out some professional produced scripts. And it's just sellingyourscreenplay.com/library. So I want to thank Juan Risa. He sent in this screenplay for Coco, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Up, and Ratatouille. Thank you, Allison Mick, who sent us the screenplay for Get Out. Thank you to Ryan Phillips, who sent in Disorderlies, Beverly Hills Cop, Friday, Creed, Girls Trip, House Party, and Coming to America. Shanawa Shinha sent in The Dark Knight. A big thank you to you. Debbie Mack sent in the screenplay for Green Book. So a big thank you to her as well. Again, thank you to everybody who sent in these scripts. This script library isn't something that I actively pursue often. I kind of set it up and then I just kind of announce it on the podcast. So please go check it out, sellingyourscreenplay.com/library. And if there's any scripts that you have in your own personal library that you don't see listed there, just email them in, just info@sellingyourscreenplay.com, and then we can just share them with everybody else. And I occasionally get requests from scripts as well. So if you're looking for something, you can send in a request, and I can announce it on the podcast. If I can't find it, maybe somebody will have it. Maybe we can find some way of just getting more scripts into the script library. Again, sellingyourscreenplay.com/library is a great free resource if you're just looking to download some screenplays that have been produced. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks, along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide. I'll teach you how to write a professional logline and query letter and how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. Really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So now let's get into the main segment. Today I am interviewing writer, director, and musician Ben Hozie. Here is the interview. Welcome, Ben, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me today.
Hey, glad to be here. How's it going?
Good. So to start out, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up and how did you get interested in the entertainment business?
Well, I was born in the Midwest and I kind of grew up in South Carolina, but I've been in New York City for like 12 years. I've always been a musician as well as a filmmaker, I guess, for as long as I wanted to do. So my life is kind of going back and forth between those two things. For those who don't know, I have a rock group called Bodega. That's kind of my day job. I've been before Bodega kind of took off, I worked as a film editor.
I gotcha. So let's talk a little bit about your film career. You have a number of shorts and documentaries and features on your IMDb page. Your first short, The Flight of the Bumblebee, maybe just quickly, how did you put that film together and get it produced?
Well, I just edited that. That's my friend Allison directed that. I was just the editor for that.
Oh, okay.
The first film I seriously made is this feature called Annunciation. I shot it in 2011. Didn't come out until 2014. It took me like really 3 years to kind of figure it out, but that was all self-financed, super cheap movie. I shot it on Super 16 at the time, though, which, might not seem like such a cheap medium, but, that was the only cost of the movie. Everybody worked for free. All the actors worked for free. And over 3-4 years, just through working day jobs, I was able to buy the 16 stock and develop it. But that movie is very kind of experimental and didn't make any, wasn't able to sell it or anything. So I just put it up for free on Vimeo.
Yeah, and what are some of the lessons you can take away from Annunciation? What's some of the things you learned?
God, I mean, I learned everything. I always tell people the best way to learn how to make a film, don't go to film school, just make a film. The amount of money you spend on your tuition, you could just make a film. It isn't until you're actually talking to actors, it isn't until you're actually looking through a lens, you know anything about movies. It's like anything, you have to learn by doing. I mean, before making that movie, this might sound kind of hilarious, but I didn't even know, how films employ different setups. There's a master shot, and then there's the shot, reverse shot, and the close-up and all that. I thought so naively that, I studied film theory in university, so I knew so much about the history of movies, but I kind of had assumed that almost in this, what I would call the Hitchcock style, that you put the lens in front of the actor, they say their line, and you really storyboard it, and that's the one shot you want. And then you move the camera over to the next shot that you're going to cut to, and you have the actor say their line in that shot, which is how movies seem when you watch them, right? But of course, anybody who makes movies knows you shoot both shots overlapping the dialogue from the whole scene playing out, and then you cut back and forth. You know what I mean? And so actually when I made Annunciation, I did not do that, partially because I was shooting on 16 millimeter film stock. So it's not like digital. You run out of film quickly. So part of the reason there's like a stilted energy to that movie is because it's like, say your one line in the shot, say your one line in this shot. And that's almost how all the dialogue in the movie is, which works for the movie because it's an abstract, I was thinking of 80s Godard, Bresson, Antonioni. Those are the big influences. So it's not meant to be naturalistic acting anyway. So it works for that movie, but it's it's kind of a hilarious backwards way of working. One thing that movie has going for it is it has incredible montage. Every shot was really, really thought out and storyboarded beforehand, and it has every angle and shot. There's something very beautiful about it. But yeah, it's you'd be like, wow, this is just a very not economical way to cover a scene. But
yeah, and why did you choose 16 millimeter? You just wanted that aesthetic?
Yes, the movie itself is about sort of holiness in the day to day. If I can say it like that, Annunciation. I'm riffing on the Annunciation scene in Christianity, where God sent light to Mary's womb, and supposedly a child was born. Right. So I was thinking of it as almost a cinematic metaphor, where light is projected onto the screen, and this thing that is man-like but is not man, namely the image on the screen, it's kind of like Jesus or something like that. So to me, I was like, okay, we need to like introduce the magic of just chemical reproduction hitting light striking a piece of celluloid. I may not be the first person to have made that connection, but at the time I thought I was, and I was like, wow, this is such a beautiful idea. That's the kind of movie you make when you're 21 years old. Actually, I think I was 22 at the time, but that's not a commercial idea. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm curious, one of the big things, and I get so many screenwriters that want to go out and make their movie. Obviously, when you made Annunciation, you had no idea what you were doing. How do you get the courage to be the leader of these people? How do you convince these actors to follow you when you don't really know what you're doing? How do you have that confidence to bring them along? How do you have the courage yourself just to get out of bed and say, I'm going to go do this thing?
Well, I don't know. I had an abundance of self-esteem at that age, way more than I have now. I thought I knew everything,
Yeah.
which is hilarious. When I thought I made that movie, I'm like, surely this movie will play at Cannes. There'll be a Criterion edition. I'm going to start an incredible career. It was like quite a shock to me that like really nobody likes the movie and it didn't really play to anybody. I had to get my comeuppance and be like, oh wait, maybe I don't know everything. But for those that aren't, don't have the gift and the curse of ridiculous high opinion of their inadequacies or whatever, you just do it. You just wake up and do it. You don't have any other choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sound advice for sure. So let's dig into PVT Chat starring Julia Fox. That's your latest feature film. Maybe to start out, you can give us a quick pitch or a log line. What is that film all about?
So, Private Chat, actually that's how I say it, although I like that you're saying PVT, is a movie about a guy who becomes obsessed with a cam girl. He thinks that she lives in San Francisco. That's what she's telling him. He lives in New York. But then one day he sees her in on the street and he tries to catch up to her. It doesn't quite reach her. But then the next time they talk online, he's like, hey, I saw you in New York. So it becomes a little bit of a noir mystery, but actually the characters develop a genuine romance. It may or may not be genuine, but something very real happens between both of them. And as you can guess, any of the screenwriters listening, they're going to meet up in real life and drama is going to ensue. So it's by far the most genre-based kind of piece I've made so far.
And where did this idea come from? What was sort of the genesis for this story?
Well, it comes from me. A lot. My earlier films are so very kind of head in the clouds. I wanted to ideas, as you can probably gather from Annunciation. I wanted to make side-on faces the reality of my generation. I was like, what do I think is the most pressing issue of our time? What's something worth studying? And I was like, well, obviously it's how the internet are changing consciousness. So, I didn't want it to be a theoretical movie though. Like my earlier work, I want it to be a more naturalistic drama. So I thought about, okay, so what's the world I want to set? Where do I want to take people? And I thought, okay, well, let's tell the story of a guy who's an internet gambler and is really into cam girls. And then I'll use that as the metaphor. There's something great about cam girls. They're not only extremely cinematic, the idea that you pay essentially an actor or an actress to perform for you for a certain amount of money. You can even feed them dialogue. It's basically the same thing as directing. You say, hey, I want you to wear this, don't wear this, look at the lens, and in fact, tell me these lines like, hey, you're pathetic. I'm going to put my cigarette out in your mouth. That's dialogue that you're giving them, and then they perform it. And you're the audience. I thought it was like a fascinating metaphor. And kind of like a nice modern twist on the classic story of the femme fatale, the woman who will destroy you and drain your wallet and break your heart. And all this going into it, but you just cannot resist. That story is never not going to be relevant, right? So
yeah, for sure. So let's talk about your writing process a little bit. Where do you typically write and when do you typically write? Are you a home office? Do you go to Starbucks? Do you write in the day? Do you write in the morning? Are you a nighttime person? What does your writing schedule look like?
I find that you have to force it. I'm not one of those like wait around for inspiration kind of people. So I say, okay, like I'm working on a different script right now, and how I've been doing it is I block off certain days. I'm like, all right, so I'm going to give myself 2 weeks to write a draft. And basically, I just put myself under the gun and kind of when I wake up, I'm like, you're not allowed to do anything else until you reach your 10-page quota. And usually it's going to be complete crap, but I like to do it right when I get up. I like to blast Beethoven into my headphones, drink a lot of coffee, and just start typing, letting ideas just kind of flow out. And I think it's important for me, at least, to almost improvise in the creative process, and then later on turn on your analytic brain and then start applying these things to your outline and really trying to see, okay, what does this material say? I think the biggest lesson I've learned as a screenwriter, having written only probably like 6 feature scripts, but I didn't really realize until recently, is that this might sound so banal, but this blew my mind, this epiphany I've had recently, and this comes from working as an editor for 10 years too, is time is really the essence of cinema, I think. The amount of time you spend on an idea shows its importance. And one big mistake I made in so many of my earlier films was I would spend 5 or 6 pages on an idea that I thought was interesting, but wasn't really interesting enough to warrant the 5 or 6 pages. And so, a lot of my work now is I think, okay, if I'm going to watch this movie, what are the 5 scenes that will be the crux and the core and the heart of this thing? And those are the scenes that deserve the meat and the camera gaze, and it might anybody listening to this might be like, yeah, obviously, but it wasn't obvious to me. I would have these scenes where people would talk about something that I found interesting for 10 pages, but it had absolutely nothing to do with the core of what this thing wanted to be. You just like, creativity finds itself a bit in an anarchistic mode, and it goes wherever it wants. And you have to, screenwriting's tough because you have to whip that guy into shape. But I think it's important to let the anarchy happen as well.
Yeah, for sure. And once you kind of get an outline done, how long does it take you then to open up Final Draft and actually start cranking out pages, writing dialogue, writing scene description?
I mean, it depends. It depends. Only recently have I started with something resembling an outline. It isn't quite like exactly scene by scene like some people do. Okay, these are like probable acts. These are like the big moments that are going to happen. These are the character transformation moments. It's all something you can fit on one page. And then I kind of like to improvise based off that one page outline. And then it is only after the fact that I really like to be brutal. And in my own work as a director, I'm more of a process filmmaker. So like, for example, in Private Chat, there was an entire 30-minute subplot that ended up getting cut. It would have been a 2-hour movie instead of a 90-minute movie. And maybe if I was better, I could have cut that into the screenplay process and saved up some time and money. But I actually kind of enjoyed filming it, even though it didn't actually come to fruition. And I think it actually helped the actors too. There's that negative space in the movie that you can just smell, whether it's a real and really well thought out world or not. And I think it's okay to have all that stuff that gets cut. That work, it wasn't for naught. You know what I mean? Negative space is really important in art.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned that you were trying to make something with this film that was a little bit more commercial. And I'm curious your take on sort of genre requirements. How do you approach screenplay structure? Have you read Blake Snyder's Save the Cat, Sid Field's screenplay? They have sort of a very, structured template. Yeah. And I'm curious how you kind of approach that, especially given that it sounds like your other films were a little more, less structured. And it sounds like this one, you were trying to make it a little more structured. How did you sort of approach the structure and the genre?
Yeah, I mean, I made a feature called The Lion's Den, which is pretty much it's also experimental in a very different way, but it has a pretty tight structure as well. But yes, when I started to work on Private Chat, I was thinking of noir, but one of the tricks of the movie is not to give too much away for the people who haven't seen it, but it starts out as sort of selling itself as sort of a nihilistic noir with a guy who's obsessed with this cam girl. And then it flips. Not only do we go a little bit into her perspective, but it also changes genre, I think. It's no longer a noir. There's no longer any really threat of violence. And it becomes kind of, I wanted it to become more of a romance. So it becomes more just about their relationship. And I use the word romantic comedy because I found that a lot of the things happening in the film hilarious, but it's nothing like what people would consider a romantic comedy in Hollywood. It's not like Sleepless in Seattle or something, but that's truly my sensibility. Is I think I make sort of comedic romantic movies, but it's tough. The movie's going to be marketed as a noir because that's how marketing works. You can't complex idea; it has to be simple, right? But yeah, I mean, there's a version of the movie that could have been made where the main character is like an incel type, or like a Travis Bickle type, who's kind of a psychopath. I was like, we've seen this movie way too many times before. I'm not the kind of guy who makes those kind of movies. So I wanted to actually flip the script and show, you think this is going to go terribly wrong, and you have to play by the rules of the genre and allow things to go terribly wrong. But I also wanted it built into the story of like, an actual genuine relationship is happening here. It's not just a catfish thing. And then there's something kind of sweet about it. And, it's not exactly like they're going to live happily ever after, but there is a true friendship that occurs in the movie. To go back to the screenwriting, I think, you have to figure out when this happens. Screenwriting is all about intention. You have to really be bold in your choices. A lot of mistakes I made when I was younger was I was like, well, it's going to be this, and it's also going to be this, and it's also kind of going to be this. It's art. It doesn't have to mean one thing, which is all good and fine, but that just means you're not a good director, because being a good director or being a good writer or being a good artist at all means you take a point of view on a situation. If you're a painter, you say, okay, well, this is how I see this object right now for this one canvas or something. You have to take a strong point of view. So anytime you're writing a scene, you have to say, what is this scene actually doing? What is it doing tonally? It doesn't have to be something as pedantic as like, what is it doing for the plot or something like that. You don't have to get too academic about it, but you have to know, what is this scene supposed to make people feel? What does it smell like? What's the tone? I think tone is really the hardest thing in film, if I can be honest. And it's hard to get right in a screenplay. Because art, we want a little bit of the ambiguity. That's what makes good art, but the tone can't be ambiguous. You have to know what that room feels like. You have to know what those characters are thinking. If you don't have a point of view, you're just faking it,
Yeah, for sure. How can people see PVT Chat? Do you know what the release schedule is going to be like?
Yes, it's going to be out on, all the usual VOD kind of things in the first week in February. Depending on where you are in the world, it'll either be, I think, the 5th, the 9th, or the 12th. So after that, it'll be out there. It'll be just a Google away. You have to pay the rental fee, which won't be too high. So, eventually it might be on certain streaming services, but to start, we're just having it be, just kind of like a rental thing,
Gotcha. And what's the best way for people to keep up with what you're doing? Twitter, Facebook, a blog, anything you're comfortable sharing, I will round up for the show notes.
Sure. I would say follow me on Twitter. Bodega Ben is my name on there, or just at Ben Hozie. And I have a blog for my filmmaking musings. The company that I make my own personal films under is called Pretorius Pictures. You remember in The Bride of Frankenstein, there was Professor Pretorius. So it's if you just Google Pretorius Pictures, it'll either my Tumblr or Vimeo will come up, and you can see my first 2 features. I put them up for free, and if you want to read about my thoughts on more cinematic musings, you can check out the blog or see some of the other shorts that we've made. And there are other people that are associated with Pretorius as well.
Gotcha. Well, Ben, I really appreciate you coming on the show and talking with me. Good luck with this film, and good luck with all your future films as well.
Hey, thank you. Good luck with the pod.
Hey, yeah, thank you, man. So
right.
Take it easy.
Yeah.
Perfect. Bye. I just want to talk quickly about SYS Select. It's a service for screenwriters to help them sell their screenplays and get writing assignments. The first part of the service is the SYS Select Screenplay Database. Screenwriters upload their screenplays along with a logline, synopsis, and other pertinent information like budget and genre, and then producers search for and hopefully find screenplays they want to produce. Dozens of producers are in the system looking for screenplays right now. There have been a number of success stories come out of the service. You can find out about all the SYS Select successes by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/success. Also on SYS podcast episode 222, I talked with Steve Deering, who was the first official success story to come out of the SYS Select database. When you join SYS Select, you get access to the screenplay database along with all the other services that we're providing to SYS Select members. These services include the newsletter. This monthly newsletter goes out to a list of over 400 producers who are actively seeking writers and screenplays. Each SYS Select member can pitch one screenplay in this monthly newsletter. We also provide screenwriting leads. We have partnered with one of the premier paid screenwriting leads services, so I can syndicate their leads to SYS Select members. There are lots of great paid leads coming in each week from our partner. Recently, we've been getting 5 to 10 high-quality paid leads per week. These leads run the gamut. There's producers looking for a specific type of spec script to producers looking to hire a screenwriter to write up one of their ideas or properties. They're looking for shorts, features, TV, and web series pilots, all types of projects. If you sign up for SYS Select, you'll get these leads emailed directly to you several times per week. Also, you get access to the SYS Select forum, where we will help you with your logline and query letter and answer any screenwriting related questions that you might have. We also have a number of screenwriting classes that are recorded and available in the SYS Select forum. These are all the classes that I've done over the years, so you'll have access to those whenever you want once you join. The classes cover every part of writing your screenplay, from concept to outlining to the first act, second act, third act, as well as other topics like writing short films and pitching your projects in person. Once again, if this sounds like something you'd like to learn more about, please go to sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. Again, that is sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. On the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing Jameson Lacasio and Adam Ambrosia, who were on the podcast before in episode 234. Definitely check out that episode if you want to learn more about their background. They're just two hustlers getting out there, getting projects produced. They started out by forming their own production company and just went from there, started out doing just anything they could do, whether it be commercials, music videos, weddings, anything they could do to just get their production company off the ground. They always kept an eye into doing narrative fiction films, which they've now completed 3. Next week, we'll be talking about their latest feature film called No Fear and how they put all of that together. So keep an eye out for that episode next week. That's the show. Thank you for listening.